time. Oh, okay. Once upon...
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you. My name is Bruce Travers, and I am the lay leader today, along with my second favorite berry, Chuck Berry. I love you, Chuck, but you're not better than Strawberry. No, sorry. Our Sunday services are as diverse as we are. So if you're visiting our church for the first time, please come back again several times before drawing any conclusions about us. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of our church activities. If we have any newcomers or guests with us this morning, we invite you to introduce yourselves. Please raise your hand, and Don will bring you a microphone with the speed of an autumn breeze. And no takers. I think I recognize everybody here. So, at this time, I would invite everybody, by the way, silence your cell phones. I always do that myself. At home, you can leave them on. That's fine. Please join us for coffee hour following the service. We now take a moment to acknowledge that the land we stand on was taken from the local indigenous people. Inspired by their culture, may we strive to become better stewards of the earth. It is good to be together, both in person and virtually.
Good morning. And that is a good morning for Reverend Leanne, who could not be with us here today. As I think most of you know, she is back in Virginia. Her ex-husband passed away just recently, and so she is back there dealing with things in Virginia. She was going to do the service today, which was going to be on Michael Servetus, who is one of our UU pioneers. It just so happened that I had just given a segment of our new UU training going over the history of Unitarian Universalists. So I had some materials on this, and I said I'd be happy to use a little baseball term, it is World Series time, to pinch hit for her. And of course, to which my wife said, well, I hope you don't strike out. And I am so glad to have Bruce here with me as well, because he will keep people laughing. I can be the straight man, which is what I usually play best. So today, we are going to be talking a little bit about our Unitarian Universalist heritage, where we came from, some of the people whose footsteps we're following in. As most of you know, our names really talk and tell what we were all about in the early church years. Unitarians believed in a single divine figure, God, who was manifested through Jesus Christ and through the Holy Spirit. But Unitarians of the day did not believe that they were distinct divine unities or individuals. So Unitarian versus Trinitarian. And Universalists, very simple too, believed in universal salvation. And as we'll see, neither of those beliefs really held up in the church. And Unitarians and Universalists very early on became heretics. And we'll see today what the church did with heretics back in those days. And I have an opening reading as well. It is from Kathleen McTeague, and it is entitled, "They Are Still With Us." In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are still with us. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us and with them choose the deeper path of living. And on we go.
I'm good, but I need to do the script. The flaming chalice is a symbol of our faith as we join with other UU churches and fellowships in this familiar ritual. As we share the light of this chalice in our sanctuary, we also welcome those of you viewing remotely to light a chalice. Our chalice lighting is by Audette Fulbright Fulson. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation. Please rise in body or spirit, as you are willing or able, and join in singing our opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, number 21, in the gray hymnal, and the words will appear on the screen.
The time for all ages. I invite the young and the young in heart to come forward for the story today. This book has a lot of very detailed pictures, so you can, if you come really close, you'll be able to see. And for those of you, of course, it's on the screen. Maybe a story about endless potential in all of us, written by Kobi Yamada, that's the person who wrote it, and Gabriela Baruch probably. Okay. This is the person who in the story. We're going to find out more things about her. Maybe what's that butterfly doing? Something's going on there. Have you ever wondered why you are here? That's a really good question. Now, in a book like this, there's words that tell a story, but the pictures often tell a story that is similar, but not quite the same. So I want you to look very carefully at this young person here. I think she's holding something in her hands. Can you tell what it is? I didn't know. Well, I want you to look at it carefully because you're going to see it a little bit later in the story. But it's not going to look quite the same. And it has birds flying next to it. Do you see those? Okay. You are the only one, you are the only you there ever has been or ever will be. You have so much to offer. Look at her friends. She's made a lot of little friends. Maybe you will invent something that no one has ever seen before. And her friends, you can see her friends here are helping. What are they doing? Can you tell?
They're making something with the mushrooms.
They're making something with the mushrooms. They sure are. They're taking these spots. I don't know what these spots are, and she's helping put them on the mushroom. That's something I've never seen before. Have you ever seen that before? Maybe you will build things that reach high into the sky. Now, do you see anything that she was, remember what she was holding in her hands at the very beginning?
I think something with the boats.
Yes, the mountains. Here, I'm going to go back so you can see. See, she's holding the mountains in her hands. And now she's set them up, and she's building this structure. Your life is yours. Try as many things as you can try. See as much as you can see. Do you see that? It's a brand new book. It hasn't been broken in. Wherever you go, wherever you go, take your hopes, pack your dreams, and never forget, it is on journeys that discoveries are made. So she's choosing some things here to carry with her. That looks kind of like goggles and a hat, like someone might in the olden days wear to fly a plane. Let's see if that comes up later. Maybe you will help others to see the beauty in each day. Or maybe you will lift cheering crowds onto their feet. No. Do everything with love. Follow your heart and see where it leads you. Have you ever seen a book with a hole in it and stairs? That's pretty neat. Books do take you interesting places. Maybe you are here to shine a light into places that have been dark for too long. What do we have in the cages here? We have an owl?
I think so.
Butterflies?
Moths.
Moths, maybe, yeah. Or it's something sparkly.
Something like
Fireflies, very good.
I think about them.
But is that what you were thinking of? Yeah. And this looks like some little creatures. I'm not sure what they are.
Like some little something that comes out at night.
Something that comes out at night. That's a very good idea. Oh my, look at this one. Maybe you will speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Very big polar bear. Ah, look what she's doing. Maybe you are here to help in ways that only you can. There will be struggles, there will be fears, and it won't always be easy. At times, it will feel really hard, and you might make a mess of things, and you may fall down. You may fail. How do you think she's feeling right now? Yeah, I think she's kind of sad, maybe even a little angry at herself. But you will always get back up and you will rise a little stronger and a little taller because there really is more inside you than you know. And this world needs your gifts, your talents, your big ideas. And maybe you are just getting started. What if you are only scratching the surface of what you can do and who you can be? So how is she helping here? Can you see how she's helping? She's watering the flowers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very dry, yes. What if you have talents you haven't discovered yet? There is something powerful, even magical about you. You already have everything it takes to do big things. Now she's making something here. You can see she's tying something. I wonder what she's doing. Let's find out. What? Say that? I'm sorry. It kind of looks like a carpet. It does. A carpet of autumn leaves. Maybe you have no idea just how good you really can be, and maybe you don't know how much you matter. But maybe, just maybe, the world has been waiting centuries for someone exactly like you. What do you think is going to happen?
I think she's trying to make an airplane for the baby.
That is a very good idea. Let's find out. One thing is for sure, you are here, and because you are here, suspense, anything is possible. So you were right. The pig, she didn't make an airplane, but she did help the pig fly, for sure. Nicely done, guys. Thank you for coming and listening. Do we have classes today? Okay. Then let's sing the kids out to their classes, please.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Horwitz from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It is a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows, and Susan Powers will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. I just have one joy to share, and that's just that I am grateful to have this caring church community, especially in this very stressful election coming up. Sharing joy. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts but remain unspoken today. From far and near, please say with me our caring words. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
Meditation. Meditation has always been one of my favorite parts of the service. I joined over 30 years ago, and when I joined, I had just started my own company. I had left the company that I had been with. I got involved in litigation, had 3 little kids at home, trying to work at home, trying to get things done. And when I came to church and we had a meditation and had a minute or two to just close my eyes, to try and relax, to try and get away from the stress, it was very important to me. And so I've always appreciated our meditation. And Lord knows right now, as was mentioned, with the election going on, the commercials going on, it's good to get away from things for a few minutes. So I ask everybody, sit up straight, put your shoulders back, put your hands in your lap, put your feet on the floor. Either close your eyes or focus on a point. If you could, lower the lights back there as well. Make it a little bit darker. Just lower the lights. Whatever you lower will be an improvement. That's better. And now, as your eyes are closed, as you're focusing on a point, we'll focus on our breathing. You'll breathe in to a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and then breathe out in a count of 4. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. So I'll start us off, and then we'll continue on for another minute. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And continue. Thank you, Hal, and hopefully everyone has been able to de-stress a little bit.
Shortly after noon, on a cold and rainy late October day in 1553, a procession began at the town hall of Geneva in western Switzerland on the border with France. At its head were the local dignitaries, magistrates in their robes and hats, members of the town council, clergymen in their gowns, and the lieutenant criminel, the chief of police. Immediately behind them rode a wave of officers on horseback and a guard of mounted archers. Next came the citizens of the city, first the well-to-do burghers, then the tradespeople and artisans, and finally a mob of the city's lower classes. Their destination was a hillside at Champel, about a mile outside the city's walls. In the midst of these fair-skinned Swiss, one man stood out, a prisoner. He was in his 40s, dark, almost Moorish, dirty and weak, with a long, unkempt beard and ragged clothing. He was surrounded by a crowd of pastors, exhorting him to confess his sins. An aging churchman walked next to him, whispering in his ear. The prisoner prayed silently in reply. The prisoner's shabby appearance belied his status as one of Europe's leading physicians and preeminent thinkers. His name was Michael Servetus, and his crime was publishing a book that redefined Christianity in a more tolerant and inclusive way. Although his book contained, almost as an afterthought, a great scientific discovery, one which a century later would propel medicine into the modern age, on that October afternoon in 1553, no one in Geneva knew or cared.
That reading was from a book called Out of the Flames, the remarkable story of a fearless scholar, a fatal heresy, and one of the rarest books in the world by Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone. That is a book that is probably the preeminent book on Michael Servetus. It's by Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone, and I have purchased it through Amazon, and I'll be donating it to our lovely library upstairs in case we don't already have one. If we do, now we'll have two. But it tells a story of a truly remarkable man, a man who was multi-talented, who was the true Renaissance man. So my idea was to talk about Michael Servetus, but also to talk a little bit about some of the people who led up to Michael Servetus as well. Unitarian Universalists have a very rich history and tradition. Coming in here, I think most people are probably not that aware of it. Those who had to sit through my little discourse on the history of church for the new UU class, I apologize to you. There'll be some repetition here, and you probably have gone through that. But if you could put the PowerPoint slides up. Yes, I'm a former lawyer and teach down at Point Park, and so I still do PowerPoints. Sorry about that. So anyhow, a short history of Unitarian and Universalist. So to begin with, Universalism. Origen was one of the early leaders of the Christian church, and he published a paper on first principles, and in that paper, he included the notion of universal salvation. So that was an issue that at that point had not been determined. Origen was one of the leading intellects of the time. Next one. And then we get to for Unitarians, what's really the beginning, 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea. And I see I misspelled Nicaea, I think, there. Anyhow, in Turkey. It was called by the Emperor Constantine. And the idea was to pull together a lot of the strands, the Christian strands that were out there. There had been a lot of different churches that had been formed, a lot of different ideas. One of the ideas was from an Egyptian theologian called Arius. And Arius believed in the notion of unity, of one divine being, God. But really the prevalent idea at the time was a Trinitarian view, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So they called this council, and they actually voted on the Unitarian versus the Trinitarian view, and the Trinitarian view won handily. And the Unitarian view became a heresy. And you may have heard of the Nicene Creed. That is at the time at the Council of Nicaea when the Nicene Creed was adopted. Next slide. Then we go to 544 AD, and this is where officially universal salvation was condemned as a heresy. So now Universalists were also heretics. Next one. So then we move forward to the 1500s, and there's Michael Servetus. And we'll talk a little more about him in a minute, but you just read, I guess I started with the finish in a sense, you read about his death, being burned to death in Switzerland in 1553. Next one. So there were two main areas in Europe in which Unitarianism and Universalism developed. The first of these was in Poland. And as you can see, it became, even though it was still heretical, it was still a heresy, let's say, it was becoming more and more popular in Poland. And the leader in Poland was a gentleman by the name of Socinius. And as you can see from the dates there, it became a pretty popular following, even developed the first Unitarian press, although eventually, approximately 100 years later, Poland did ban the Unitarian thinking known as, at that time, as Socinianism. And then we go to my favorite place, Transylvania. Transylvania, which is currently actually a region within Romania. But back then, it was its own separate country. And Francis David is another one of these pioneers whose steps we're following, who organized a Unitarian movement there. And he was very influential with the king of Transylvania and actually got him to convert to Unitarianism. And as king, he was able to decree that there would be religious toleration in Transylvania, that they would allow Catholics, Lutherans, Calvinists, and Unitarians to all be established and to conduct their own services in Transylvania. However, there was a problem. King Sigismund died 2 years later, and the new king who came in was a staunch Catholic, and he revoked the Edict of Torda, and Francis David, who continued on in Transylvania, ended up being condemned and put in jail, where he eventually died. And then we go back again to Michael Servetus. Now this was also, remember, the time of the Reformation. Martin Luther and John Calvin. They were arguing that Catholic practices, and particularly indulgences, did not make sense, that they were something that should not be allowed within the church. And indulgences was a practice where the Pope could basically, in a sense, pardon people for money and forgive them of all their sins. Martin Luther wrote that if he's going to do this, why doesn't he just give indulgences to everybody, to the entire world, to the population? Why doesn't he wipe away everyone's sins? But that was not the way the Catholic Church operated back then. Now, Michael Servetus was born in Spain That's why the reference to the one Moorish, darker-skinned fellow was in the opening reading. Born in 2000, or excuse me, 50. Yeah, and I got that is a little bit off too. All right, so he was born in 1511 and died in 1553. And as I said, he was truly a Renaissance man. He was gifted as a theologian, a physician, a cartographer, a Renaissance humanist, a mathematics. He was well-versed in mathematics, astronomy, meteorology, geography, anatomy, medicine, pharmacology, jurisprudence, translation, poetry, and of course, the scholarly study of the Bible. So at a very young age, at age 20, he wrote his first book, which was, and you can leave that Michael Servetus one on, The Errors of the Trinity. Now, because of that, he became widely condemned as a heretic, and if you remember, Spain at that time had the Inquisition, and in Spain, they, in absentia, sentenced him to death, which led him to leave Spain, move to France, got an education in France where he developed a lot of the knowledge in a lot of the different areas that are listed there. He taught, he became a doctor. He actually is very famous in the sense that he discovered, as a pulmonologist, how blood flowed between the lungs and the heart. No one had actually discovered that at that point. He was the first to discover that. So he was a medical doctor as well as a scientist. And interestingly, he sent his book on the errors of Trinity to John Calvin, who lived in Switzerland in Geneva. And they established a dialogue, letters going back and forth. And initially it was interesting in that they disagreed, but as Servetus continued to send letters to Calvin, Calvin apparently got madder and madder and madder, and eventually felt that Servetus needed to be punished as a heretic. But Servetus was in France, he was in Switzerland, so he was limited in what he could do. And Servetus was beginning to worry about what he could do and where he could stay safely. And in 1553, he wrote his second major book, which was Confessions of Christianity. Let me just make sure I've got that name correct. I believe that's correct. Confessions of Christianity. And he sent that to John Calvin as well. And Calvin, at that point, decided to do everything he could to see if he could find him and have him put to death as a heretic. And for some strange reason, he was planning to go to Italy, apparently, eventually. But on his way, he decided to stop in Geneva. And when he was in Geneva, he was discovered. People realized who he was. He was put in jail. He was tried. He was convicted. And back in those days, when you were convicted to death, the normal manner of death was death by beheading. But they felt that that was not good enough for him, that he needed something more severe, which in those days was being burned at the stake. And so, as you read in the opening reading, they took him out, they burned him, and they burned all of his books as well at the stake. And that's where the name of the book that came from, the book about Servetus, Out of the Flames, a remarkable story of a fearless scholar. We've heard about him being a scholar and all the different areas in which he's been involved. The Fatal Heresy, which was a Unitarian concept. And then one of the rarest books in the world. So basically, they burned all of his books. There were no books remaining that anyone could find for a long time. And then eventually, 100 years later, someone found one of the books. And a couple hundred years after that, they found a second book, and then they eventually found that Calvin apparently had kept the original book that Servetus had sent to him, the Confessions of Christianity. So there are 3 known copies of that original book that are still remaining. And that, in a nutshell, is Michael Servetus. I'm not going to go into more detail. I'll save some of that for Reverend Leanne next year. The other thing that I should note is that today, one of the reasons why she wanted to do this service is because this is the 471st anniversary of his death on October 27th, 1553. The other thing I should mention today, too, is it's also another anniversary, a bad anniversary, really. It's 5 years since the shooting at the Tree of Life, and so we should keep that in mind as well. So that is Michael Servetus. And I encourage you all to take a look. You can go to Wikipedia. There are various books out there, UU books, that talk about our history. It is true that we really walk in the footsteps of some very famous people. And it wasn't until the Unitarians and Universalists came to the United States where there was a tolerance for religious freedom that Unitarians and Universalists were really free to practice their faith. Even in England, because there were a lot of Unitarians and Universalists in England, they still were considered heretics. They weren't persecuted with death, but they still were persecuted. There were riots at Unitarian churches during the 1700s, and a lot of those Unitarians and Universalists ended up moving to the United States and started Unitarian and Universalist churches here in the United States. And as we know, 1961, they merged, and we became the Unitarian Universalist Association. So I encourage you to take a look at that, find out a little more about your history, and hopefully I've been able to give you at least a little bit of history about some of our forefathers.
Please join me in affirming our mission statement, which will appear on the screen. There we go. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world. Excuse me. Generosity is a spiritual practice, one that enlarges the heart and lightens the spirit. For no matter how much or how little we have, in the sharing of it, both the one who gives and the one who receives are blessed. As an independent Unitarian Universalist congregation, we depend on your financial support to pay our staff, to maintain our beautiful campus, and to offer meaningful worship services like this one and religious exploration programs. We appreciate your generosity, and we will be good stewards of your contributions. Instructions for online contributions are on the screen. We now have a QR code that can be used. The code can be found on the screens and also on the back of your order of service. If you're visiting us for the first time, feel free to let the basket pass. Your presence with us today is your gift to us. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully accepted. Please join me in dedicating the offering. You'll see the words on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. And now please rise in body or in spirit as you are willing or able, and join in singing Gather the Spirit, number 347 in your gray hymnal. The words will appear on the screen. I can never sing our hymns without swaying, and now I know most of you do too. Our chalice extinguishing today is by Deborah Burrell. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond.
So I wasn't given any announcements except one from Reverend Leanne. And next week, there's going to be kind of a continuation. She is going to do a service that celebrates the Day of the Dead, the Mexican tradition, de los Días de Muertos, something along those lines. So she's asking people to bring in a picture of a beloved family member or relative who has passed away. She's also suggested that if they had a favorite food, to bring in maybe some of that food for our table. So remember that. There'll be an announcement that goes out tomorrow as well on that. Are there any other announcements out there that need to be made? I don't see anyone clamoring to be heard, so I think that will probably do it. And I'd like to say then, in closing, simply to go now in peace. May your mind be full of action. May your heart be full of love. Thank you.